Welcome to the December 9th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be aware of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair recognizes the attendance and assistance of all our staff members, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, Mark, Amy, and Susan. And we have a full house tonight, all commissioners in attendance. I'd like to remind you guys that for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time so we don't speak over each other. And again, all the votes have to be done by roll call. So when I call your name, state your name and your vote. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I will call for public comments and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. First up is vote minutes, December 2nd, 2020.
Mr. Chair, I've read the minutes, found them substantially in order, and vote their move their adoption pending any other corrections.
Yeah, so this Gladfelter, I'll issue a second, but I have 3 corrections which I've sent to Susan and Jen. But okay. I just want to state them so you know them. For the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, I recuse myself from that vote. For the town of Falmouth, making an open trench culvert between Bourne's Pond and Bog Pond. I just said, I'm delighted to see this. It's great to see it done, particularly since the fish ladder was put in downstream. So it'll allow the fish to get all the way up into Bourne's Pond. And the third thing is on page 10, and this was the Surf Drive area project where I had mentioned redevelopment, and then Jen pointed out the definition of redevelopment in 1018, and I said I agree with Jen, and I'm just adding this is not a redevelopment project. That's
okay,
it.
Pat, I know you sent some things in too, correct?
I did. I sent them to Susan, and I don't have my paperwork with me, but there were only a few adjustments.
Susan's the important one. All right, anybody have anything else? All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as corrected. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Gurney, aye.
Maury?
You're muted. You're muted, Maury.
Yeah, I wasn't here.
That's right. Okay. Pat?
Aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
It was unanimous. We've accepted the minutes. Thank you. Next up, request for determination of applicability. Logan Huffman, 29 Juniper Point Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to reconstruct an existing 8x20 dock and an existing 4x13.5 walkway in kind. Mr. Newton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a +3 under the state and a +5 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Just so the commission is aware, the applicant is aware of this motion.
And this is to bring it forth to a notice.
Correct.
Mark?
So I'll second Courtney's motion, but Mark Gurney is trying to say something.
Yeah, but you interrupted him. Mark, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered if you could give a little more explanation of why this is a positive determination?
It should probably be conditioned because of the scale of the work. They're talking about replacing an entire pier, driving pilings directly into the resource areas.
It's replaced in the same location, the same piling, same type of piling, or is it totally different construction?
We actually didn't get very much detail on the application either, so that's another reason. But this will give it an opportunity for him to provide us with a full methodology and identify a contractor and to be properly conditioned.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table to accept staff's recommendation of a positive finding, putting it, moving it to the level of a notice. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation of a positive motion. Next up, Richard R. and Lyra A. McClone, 670 East Falmouth Highway, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to repair an existing septic system with no increase in design flow. Mr. Newton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw, and resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Thank you. Anybody?
The motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney? Did we lose Courtney?
We did lose Courtney.
He is gone.
All right. Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Okay, we lost Courtney, but we still have a unanimous vote, so we've accepted staff's recommendation. Excuse me. Next up, request for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Pincinel Builders, 47 Gunning Point Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling to construct a new single-family dwelling supported by concrete piers, to install a new Title V sewage disposal system, and to install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Mike Borselli as panelist to present the project.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Borselli.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. The property owner, Ilya Merman, may be in the audience. He doesn't.
He is, Mike.
He wanted to monitor the hearing and be available if there's any issues or questions. He doesn't need to be impaneled unless there's a specific necessity to do that. So with that, I'd like to make the presentation. And I'd like to share my screen if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. Before you on the screen is hopefully my plan of existing conditions to familiarize yourself with the site. The property is at 47 Gunning Point Avenue. It has water frontage and a coastal beach to the west. So there's land under the ocean, a coastal beach. There's a stone revetment that is sloping and it meets the definition of a coastal bank. So we've delineated the top of a coastal bank and the associated 50-foot no disturbance zone A and outer buffer zone B. In addition, the lot is in, a portion of the lot is in land subject to coastal storm flowage. In this case, it's flood hazard zone VE elevation 18, the boundary of which is shown as a blue line. And it meanders through the site and through the existing house. And of course, parallel and 25 feet landward, 25 feet landward of that is the Falmouth Wetlands regulation velocity zone. So a significant portion of the existing house is in a velocity zone. The site has typical landscaping and lawn driveway areas. There's a septic system under the driveway, and there's actually 2 septic systems. There's another one over on this side of the property, both of which are to be pumped and removed and would no longer be part of the project, and a new Title V system will be installed. There is a significant vegetated buffer located between the top of the revetment and the formal landscape portion of the yard. There is a path leading through the buffer. A lot of the buffers natives, and there's also a lot of invasives. I've outlined on here what the is a small section of the structure, impervious surfaces in the outer buffer zone B. The proposed plan. Oh, I'm sorry, there's the existing plan again. Now comes the proposed plan. And the proposed plan shows the house to be reconstructed. If you look closely, I've also added some notes that I'll speak to as I make the presentation. But the proposed plan shows the outline of the existing house in a red delineation. So this is a raise and reconstruction project, and all of the work is proposed in the outer buffer zone B. No work is proposed in any no disturbance zone A. And the structure is effectively being rebuilt within the general same footprint with some slight deviations. As I made reference to earlier, there's 2 existing septic systems that are proposed to be removed. And then a new Title V septic system will be installed in the driveway area, in an area outside of all wetland resources and outside of the buffer to the wetland resources and outside of all velocity zones. As part of the proposed house reconstruction, there are 3 cedar trees that are in close proximity to the house. One is outside the 100 feet from the top of the coastal bank. 2 are just inside, and they're in the outer buffer zone B. The plan that was filed doesn't note this, so I understand. I got this information after conversations with staff and review of the staff report, so I highlighted them in red so I can identify something that was discussed in the staff report, fully understanding that the final plan would have to be revised to show these formally to be removed. They're proposed to be removed. At first, we were considering not removing them and aggressively pruning them, but after we talked with staff, it only makes sense that in reality they would be better to be removed and replaced. So we're proposing to remove them here and put them in a cluster with some other cedars a little bit further into the buffer zone in an area that is protected by some vegetation from the prevailing southwest wind. and hopefully they can survive in this location. So there'd be mitigation for the removal of these 3 by the installation of 3 in this location. There is a slight increase in impervious surfaces, so I outlined the calculations on the plan. There's a net increase of 86 square feet in the B zone, and we're proposing to that the ratio of 2 to 1 would be 172 square feet. We're proposing to provide 200 square feet. And originally, the plan proposed this area, which would supplement the existing vegetation and enhance the width of the buffer zone by adding the 200 square feet here for this increase. We discovered after it was staked that we hadn't identified there's some ornamentals here. There's 3 or 4 hydrangea and a couple of other ornamentals. So and again, this would be on a revised plan after discussion with staff. I put a handout on here just to show you what we were proposing to be on the revised plan. And that would be to remove the ornamentals temporarily and plant the natives in their place, and then replant the ornamentals in areas that are already in landscape with ornamentals, so that the natives would be adjacent to the natives and the ornamentals would be moved back out into the yard. Another matter that was raised by staff was what will happen to the existing stone walls. There's 2 landscape walls that ease the slope around the existing house. And during the demolition and reconstruction of the house, these areas I've circled in a highlighter would be removed and then reinstalled in the same place after the house construction occurs. So they'd be temporarily removed during the demolition and then reinstalled and blended back in with the walls that would remain. The walls that would remain would be here, and then this wall that's along the property line. These are like low profile landscape walls. So we will submit a revised plan that also indicates that. So the site has been, the project's been designed to meet the standards that you outline in your regulations for redevelopment under FWR 10.18. And all the disturbances that are proposed are in areas that were previously disturbed, and no additional alteration to buffer other than the cedar trees identified would occur. I also thought I'd save the best till last for my presentation. As we know, this is a velocity zone, and we've had discussions about storage in velocity zones on the lower levels and breakaway panels and other matters related to those activities in a velocity zone. And my initial application and plans had proposed that a section under the building with an area of 375 square feet be allowed to be enclosed for incidental storage. We came up with a number of 375 square feet based on past experience on other projects, and what we perceived as sort of the comfort level by the commission. We also came to that conclusion after discussions with Jen about what to consider proposing that would have a likely chance of approval. And that's what we proposed. Subsequent to that, and after the staff had a chance to really look at the plans, it was determined that perhaps the 375 square feet might be a little aggressive, because at the time I had my preliminary conversations with Jen, we hadn't brought up brought up the concept of there being a 2-car garage as part of the application, and that kind of changed staff's opinion a little bit, because although the garage is going to be primarily for 2 cars to park in, it's 24 by 24, and there are both property owners work and they park their vehicles in the car, and they go to work each day and come back and keep the vehicles in the garage. So there is some limited storage, but not a lot of storage for things that you may otherwise store in a basement level. But all that being said, we looked at the plans a little closer with the owner, and we looked at the lower level plan that I'm now sharing with you. Here's the area that was originally proposed, 375 square feet. It'd be accessed from outside by the deck for that. And we're going to submit a revised plan. We're hoping that if we reduce the 375 square feet to 200 square feet, that you could approve that as an area of limited storage available. 200 square feet's 10 by 20. There are some things that you need a place to store. There would be incidentals like kayaks, outdoor furniture that might be on the deck that you store in the off season, things like that. In the 200 square feet kind of is analogous to other sections of your regulations where you allow, 200 square feet is mentioned as an addition. So there might be some logic to 200 square feet. So we intend to revise the plan to reduce that to 200 square feet. I think that sums it up. I think I covered the project proposal, and I also touched on things that staff had brought up in the report in my conversations and how we intend to revise the plan. So we wanted to hear your comments and see if there's other revisions that we may need to make. And then after that, request a continuance, submit revised plans, and hopefully be able to close the hearing at your next scheduled hearing night. And with that, I will be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mike. Jen, do you want to start?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I think Mike gave a pretty detailed presentation, including the staff's concerns. Initially, we were having conversations with Mr. Borselli regarding the storage. And again, when we saw the plans and saw that there was a garage, which we usually allow that 400 square feet, or that's kind of what the board's been doing when, the entire structure is in a velocity zone and there is no enclosed space, such as a garage. So that kind of changed our thoughts a bit. Mike was understanding to that. So that's great. Mike, the only other question I had, Alyssa did a great job of reviewing the plan and questioning certain aspects like the stone walls, the placement of the mitigation. So that was all addressed. Mike, did you get an answer on the second rinse station?
I did.
Is it going to remain a rinse station?
It actually is a rinse station. Yes, it's
okay.
An outside rinse station that you can access from the living space instead of from the lower ground level.
Okay, so there's no access from the ground level. It's from the living space.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's my only additional question. Kevin Newton, any?
All right.
I have nothing to add, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to open up to commission comments. Start with Betsy.
I have no comments or questions. Thanks.
Okay, Courtney.
Well, Mike, I like your 200 square foot proposal. It's we'll call it the Borselli precedent. So when we limit all future storage areas, we'll cite you as the example for going forward. Anyway, good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, I think you did a good job as well, and I like the fact that you addressed all the staff comments. So Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Kevin O'Brien?
I guess I'd like to second that. I had more than second thoughts about the 400 square feet. More than just the garage, what concerned me is if you look at the drawings, you get an overestimate of just what you think is available for space under there. But when you look at it in profile and you see the slope, it's a lot more limited than you might think. But I must say that, there's no way you can, unless you look at everything as an individual case, there's no way you can have a hard and fast rule in this nonsense. And I think the 200 is a reasonable compromise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Mark?
Yes, well, I think as I've said in the past, I'm not quite sure I understand where 200, 400, or 1,000 comes from in any specific regulation. Maybe it's just history and maybe that's the way it is, but I don't care for it myself. But I think certainly Mr. Berselli has done a great job in trying to meet those requirements he hears, so kudos to him, that's all.
Thank you. Maury?
Where'd I go? Where am
You're
I?
there.
You're good, Maury.
Yeah.
Still there? Okay. I just had two questions, and one was the cedars, if they could be transplanted. I don't know if that's a possibility, but they live there and they're adapted to there. Instead of cutting them down and transplanting them with more hybrid stuff from the nurseries. And are the AC and generator units that are in the V zone going to be elevated?
Yes, they will be. Both will be elevated.
Okay, thank you. I would just consider the transplanting.
That's a great idea. I'm going to look into that with an arborist. It
Okay,
would
thank you
also
very
be, they're more mature.
Well, and they just have lived there, so they're going to be happier than something you're going to get from a nursery in Georgia.
Fully understand, and it makes sense.
Thank you very much. It was a nice plan.
Thank you.
All right. Maury, you good?
Yep, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thanks. Pat?
No questions. Thanks. Nice plan, Mike.
Thank you. So I guess.
Peter.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I thought everyone had spoken. I was going to request a continuance.
No,
Where is Peter?
Almost.
Oh, there he is.
Peter's here.
I have a question about the corner of the pergola that was staked out in the yard. It's closer to the resource area than the existing house and deck. Could you comment on that?
It is slightly closer, but it's only in a B zone, not in an A zone. So I believe that on an undeveloped lot, we'd be able to fully develop the B zone, except for, of course, the 10-foot structure setback. So that minor inclusion being mitigated with the native planting, I believe renders this project conforming to the regulation.
No further questions.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you. Yes, I'm enjoying this interaction between the staff and our esteemed experts in the community. It really seems to have reached a nice level. I think it's great. It maybe takes away from our responsibility, but at the same time, I think it's really sharpened the pens and made these plans really workable. Thank both the staff and Mike for working this stuff out ahead of time. It's the way it should be done, I believe. Thank you. No other questions or comments.
Thank you.
Chair, I'd just
Jen, is
like,
there anything in the public chat function?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There's a comment from Michael Eater. Could the applicant explain why the plan has a solid thick line on the sides, but a thin line to the rear of the property? Same with why does it not show the property owner on the water side of the property? There is a back lot line to this property, correct?
Yes, and that wasn't by intention. The property, the line on the most westerly side should and can be revised to a thicker line. I believe Mr. Eater is raising that because Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries does own a strip of land between our property at the Riprap and Buzzards Bay. So what I will do is, we recognize that. I intend to add the name of Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries to the plan and bolden the line. If I can share you the screen for a very brief moment, Mr. Chairman, I'll point to what I'm talking
Sure.
about.
Thank you.
So I believe Mr. Eater's talking about the fact that this line here isn't as, there's a line
We're
that
not there
runs,
yet.
Correct.
it's not as thick
Yep,
as
there
this.
you are.
That
Thank you.
wasn't by intention. We will make that as thick and we will add right here, Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries is an owner of a strip of land here. In fact, they were notified as an abutter and we received an email from Katie Taylor of Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries. So that'll be also revised and submitted on the revised plan.
Thank you. Jen, is there any other comments on there?
Mike, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yes.
Nope, that was the only chat, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, I believe you have a request.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I know you're not meeting on I think the 23rd or the 30th. So you're meeting
Correct.
next week and then you're meeting on the 6th. And I can't submit the plans, obviously, 1 week prior to the hearing for next week. So I guess I'm asking for a continuance to January 6th.
Mike, can you also make sure that the architect gives us a revised A7 plan?
Yes,
Shows that enclosure, please.
good point.
I believe
Yep.
that's the only one that shows that.
Yep,
So any of the textuals that depict that would be great. Might be A7 and A2.
will do.
Thank you.
All right, anybody?
At the request of
Yep.
the applicant, propose a continuance to January 6th, 2021.
Second, Gladfelter, and I have a question.
Okay. Go ahead with the question.
Actually, it's not a question. It's a comment to Mike. I don't know if this is the end of the year comment, but not only were the plans clear, but your presentation, you put a lot of thought into the order of the presentation.
Oh,
And
thanks.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. 35 years, I'm finally figuring it out.
Oh, you got Betsy's approval after all that. Oh, boy.
And it is really helpful to have the staff comments and be able to go through them prior to the hearing.
I think it's better for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So. All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue this till 1/6 for all the noted revisions requested. So if there's no other comments, I'm gonna go for the vote. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until January 6, 2021. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, and I'll reserve my Merry Christmas till next week. I'll see you next week. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good night,
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike.
Good night, Mike. Mike, do you want to stay? Oh, no, I think he's gone. Okay. Figured he was going to stay for Burke, but okay.
I guess the answer was no.
He'll be back. All right. Next up, vote order of conditions. First one, Town of Falmouth, 46 Tecum Way, Walkway, Falmouth, Mass. Jen,
1 second, Mr. Chairman. I have to bring something up on my
You want the quorum, Jamie?
email.
please.
Courtney, Kevin,
Yes.
Betsy, Jamie, Steve, Peter, Mark.
Not Maury.
Not Maury, not Pat.
Okay. Thank you.
So this was the restoration order, restoration notice of intent for the daylighting of Tacoma Way. I think the only concern the staff would have is just like to watch the dewatering. Kind of concerned about the root systems of the trees, but I think, you know, we can work around that. And if the trees have to come down, they do have to come down. So, I mean, I think Jill, the Woods Hole Group did a good presentation. I know they've been working on this for quite a while. And it's been a priority project for MES for quite some time. So there is a certain set of conditions that is placed on this project by the state under the restoration order of conditions. So if you have anything else you would like to add, just let me know.
Anybody want to throw anything in there?
Oh, the only thing that came to mind
All
is
right.
the watering. Jen will deal with that.
Oh yeah, time of year restrictions and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Sure,
I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the order as discussed.
Patton, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept the order of conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Aye. Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, Terrence J. and Margaret N. Forster, 37 Beckles Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This was the presentation by Dan Celine on how he kind of modified the plan to address some of the commission's concerns. I mean, there's still a lot of fill going on the site, but less than was proposed. I think the board, the construction access for that perimeter wall was addressed through the RDA. So they did get the RDA last week for the construction access on that wall. I think the only note that I have that the commission was concerned with was a erosion control plan, because that there's going to be a lot of fill brought on that site, and we need to make sure that it does not go directly into Buzzards Bay if we have a storm event like we did on, when was it, Saturday?
Days ago.
Yeah. So, and Courtney, I think you were big on the erosion control plan, correct?
Yeah, they got to, they want it's got to be detailed and approved by staff and or a couple of people in the commission.
And you kind of talked about it being like phased, right?
Yeah, I mean, they should just come up with a plan, a narrative, and then a description of what controls they're going to use, when they're going to install them, and all that. And that should be reviewed and approved before the work starts.
Okay. I think just the sheer size of this project and the amount of earthwork that's being done, we'll meet with who was it, Cataldo on site prior to, and just kind of talk through the on-site methodology with him. It's one thing to have him stated at a hearing and then provide us a narrative on the erosion control plan, but to be able to have that information and then talk it through on the field, I think is going to be important for this particular project.
You might want to check in periodically.
You hear that, Mr. Newton?
I do.
I know you're listening. Your agents,
really wouldn't be a bad
your
idea for a
agents will
project
check
like
in on
that.
this project. On site prior to. Okay. Anything else you want me to add?
Betsy, I think I have the quorum as everyone.
Everyone except Pat and Maury. In fact, Pat and Maury aren't on any of these.
Oh.
It just
Duly
worked out
noted.
that way.
All right, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to this?
I'll make a motion to accept as discussed.
Patton, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. If there's nothing else. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. Just to know, you guys, when it comes to, when we have a busy night, the comments, I try to spread them around, but the votes I always do alphabetically just because of the formality of it to make sure it's on record correctly. So that's just why Betsy's always first. But only in that regard. Hey.
I thought it was because she was special.
Yeah, she's special.
That's what I thought it
Next
was.
up, Davis Neck. Yeah.
I'm crushed, Jamie.
All right.
And I'm last because
You're special too.
Yeah,
That's special
because you're
too,
special.
Steve. It's all the average people
right.
who are in the middle.
I'm okay being average. All right, we're all getting giddy because we have a short night, so let's move on. Next up, Davis Neck LLC, 0 Davis Neck Road, map 4522B, parcel 0000004, East Falmouth, Mass. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the removal of a portion of that revetment at the end of Davis Neck Road. Where the heck is that one? Oh, it's right in front of me. And the installation of the core fiber rolls and plantings along that. The project was continued to so they could get talk to the town engineer about the proposed construction access, which they were told they need a street opening permit for, which we will write into the order, as well as they have to post a bond with the town to repair that area once they are completed. But other than that, I this is another one I want to do. I think it's important and a good learning experience for the agents to do an on-site prior to work.
And this one will be interesting to follow if there's a major storm in the area.
I mean, I think this one should have some monitoring components to it.
I do too.
I'm not sure about this one, so Betsy, do you think we should have twice a year monitoring and just think annual monitoring?
I think twice a year, because
Okay.
storms can hit different times. I also think there ought to be, you know, a set of photographs taken, you know, at given spots, and then
Yep.
as part of that.
So set up photo stations.
Right.
So twice a year plus after every major storm event.
Yep.
Jen, did they address material compatibility?
We can address it. We'll put in that it has to be compatible material.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else they want to see in there? There's no time of year restriction, correct?
No, not on this one.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the order as discussed.
Thank you.
Walsh, second.
Thank you. All right. Jen, you good?
Yes, I'm good.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to accept the order of conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Pretty, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, Karen and David Howe, 0 Vineyard Street, Falmouth, Mass. Falmouth, Mass. All right.
So different quorum, Jamie.
All right.
So Maury's still off. I'm off and Pat's on. So it's Jamie, Steve, Kevin, Courtney, Peter, Mark, and Pat.
Okay. All right. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was the proposed beach nourishment and beach grooming. Just checking something. You know, the first proposal was the use of the Sandman. That was not going to, I think, be approved by this board. And obviously DEP had some strong technical comments regarding the use of that machine. We asked for supplemental information provided by ECR. I still have some concerns with their methodology. It's really vague. It says basically, if the rock deposits are unable to be covered adequately with sand, they will be collected in 5-gallon buckets and spread out in a 5 to 10 foot zone. It's just really vague. Who who's going to determine how many rocks are collected? You know, a 3-man crew, quite honestly, might be even more effective of removing the cobble than that machine. I mean, you know, so again, it's removing that cobble. It's almost destabilizing the beach. I don't have as much problem with a true compatible beach nourishment, but the volume, what was the volume? Help me out, guys.
100 yards.
I think they wanted 100 yards, which is, how many dump trucks is that? Like 5? It's like 20 yards, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of sand for that small area of beach. And they want that like every year, which usually this board will approve something like that over the course of 3 years. Again, I also have concerns because the profiles that were provided to us, we had asked for, you know, profiles prior to. Those profiles, you know, were from 2017. We need to know what that beach looks like now. And not when they're going to go nourish it. I mean, this board should be reviewing, should have had the opportunity to see what the beach looks like today in its current condition. So the staff was disappointed that we didn't get updated.
Can I say something
profiles.
to that?
Excuse me?
Can I say something to that though?
Sure.
If the transects they've given us are from 2017, that would have been prior to that last nourishment they did, no?
I'd have to check on that, but it was definitely prior to them using the Sandman machine on the beach.
Right, so my point is, wouldn't that be better information for us? Because we didn't get that the last time.
So the last time, you know, they did the profiles. They didn't submit them. They just did not submit them. So yes, we have the profile of when they put the beach nourishment on. That's fine. That's good information, Jamie. But they've also been modifying that beach since 2017 till now, or till whenever the permit expired. I think this summer. So, you know, they have been altering the composition and the form and volume of that beach over the last 3 years. So I think it's very important that this board should have been provided with updated profiles that we requested, quite frankly, in the first hearing. Updated profiles does not mean profiles from 2017 prior to them, you know, grading and modifying that beach with the use of that machine that we asked them repeatedly not to use.
Okay, so that could be a condition then, no? They get prior to starting to get.
Well, that's what they proposed, is they would give us the profiles prior to prior to placing additional sand on the beach.
And on that same note, what about the compatibility?
2017?
What was that, Kevin?
Second, Kevin. What was that, Jamie?
One at a time. Kevin?
In other words, what they would give us is the information from 2017.
No.
They gave you the information.
Okay, so we could use that. If they restored it to that level, they couldn't be adding any more than it was at that time.
I don't understand what your comment is, Kevin. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Don't worry about it. I'm just trying to think of some place that we are comfortable. Let's be honest, before they arrived and started working on it, and use that as the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My feeling
Mark?
is we're sitting right behind a groin. That area is going to be changing every year. Maybe the best thing we could do is to measure it now and then follow it in the future, trying to backdate whatever kind of measurements we might make up. Doesn't mean much because the sand goes in and the sand goes out and kind of.
Yeah, and that's what Jen's saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
The question is, when do they do that?
Prior to any new nourishment. So that would be a condition on this project, that they have to supply that current prior to starting the project.
Current, you mean current 2020 or current 2021?
Wow. It sounds like they haven't done it, so it's probably going to end up being 2021 anyway. But it would still be prior to their nourishment, right? Because they're not going to do the nourishment in the next 3 weeks.
No.
I'm not sure what we use it for then, because, you know, winter is when the sand goes out generally. So if they do a profile, say in January or February, it's going to be a pretty low profile. And if they put 200 yards on that, that's going to be a lot of sand.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, the profile they make will immediately be out of date and probably way off. I don't know, maybe, I guess I don't see much sense in either profile, but maybe the best thing to do would be to have them put 100 yards down and then do a profile and say, okay, this is sort of the new baseline and that's what we expect you to keep to.
Any other thoughts?
Just on the cobble business. I think
I'd
we
stay with the,
yeah, I
stay with
want to be clear that, you know, they can't remove any cobble. And I don't think they should be able to kind of relocate it into an area that's more convenient for them. They can rake the beach, but they can't, you know, end up piling up cobble in a given area or remove it. They can redistribute it in the same area when they're raking, but they can't take it out. I don't know how you phrase that, but you understand where I'm going with that.
I mean, I think what you could say is they can spread the nourishment, but they can't remove that cobble.
Yeah, and they can't go and rake it all out in an area that's 40 feet long and then pile it up in a 10 by 10 area, because that's more convenient for them and more comfortable for them to put their bums down on the beach.
What was that, Jamie? I mean, Courtney?
Yeah, you can phrase it more politely, but you understand.
Okay. So you're going to allow, at this point, you're going to allow the beach nourishment.
Yep.
Okay, so we go back to that. Kevin Newton, I cannot seem to find my, hang on, narrative. You have yours in front of you, Kevin?
I can try to VPN for it.
The board gives me 1 second. I just need to check because I want to see if it's the, you know, you usually will allow like 100 cubic yards over a 3-year period, not every year.
So why would we change that now?
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I just want to double check. Okay, hang on. My VPN is not letting me in. Just trying to jump on the server real quick, guys. Hang on. Sorry, I know this. You wanted this to be a short night. I'll raise you there, Kevin.
100 yards is not very much over that beach area. I was just looking at it. It might be like, if it was spread evenly, maybe 3 or 4 inches. We're not talking about a mountain here.
Okay, cubic yards of sand.
I do think that Courtney hit, to my mind, the main thing is I don't want them doing what they're certainly a good itch to do, which is rake out all the rocks and either discard them completely or put them off in a nice little pile off of the edge, which makes the beach more susceptible to erosion in the future. So somehow we have to manage where they put these rocks that they clear off.
They shouldn't be clearing any of the cobble off. They can cover the cobble with the beach nourishment sand and take that kind of flat rake and kind of spread out their sand. But there's no control on how many rocks are being removed. It was very vague,
right,
kind of methodology, and one that, you know, given the past history and past problems on this particular property with beach grooming, it just leaves it way too wide open in my mind. And there was one summer where the staff was being called down there, like, you know, twice a week, and we just cannot have that happen again. So
maybe just don't allow them to move the stones at all.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what happens at every beach on the South Shore. Sand gets swept out, cobbles show up, and then sometimes the sand comes in and covers them. In this case, they'll be nourishing sand to cover them, but they won't be removing them.
correct. So allow for the nourishment, but not the raking of the cobble.
And did you want me to read part of this?
No, I wanted the what I was looking for was the 100 cubic yards. Do you want 100 cubic yards per year or over the course of the permit?
I think if we get a transept, then we can see if there's any call for 100 yards next year. Or maybe we don't want them just to continue to pile up the beach if the sand isn't moving. We sort of suspect it is, but if it's not, maybe the thing to do is have a transept after they put the sand in, and then have that be the gate they have to pass next year to show that they need sand.
So when do you want the initial transects, Mark?
I would think before they start putting this.
So you want one immediately before and then immediately after. I think they should be doing them twice. Yep. Before, then immediately after, and submitted to the commission. The transects are taken on the ground transects. The town engineer was not happy with their proposed methodology at the original hearing. On the ground survey, no removal of cobbles is allowed. And they are allowed to remove trash, correct?
Yeah.
And then allow them to remove a bit of the dry rack, but leave 10% of the wet rack for the nesting shorebirds, which is pretty consistent with every other beach maintenance plan.
Yes.
Yep.
Compatible grain size. Anything else, guys?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so allow the beach nourishment, allow the spreading of the beach nourishment. You know, they have to do the transects prior to, transects after. That information needs to be submitted to the commission. The initial transects need to be submitted to the commission prior to beach nourishment. They are not allowed to remove the cobble. They can remove by hand trash and dry rack, but 10% of the wet rack needs to be left, and rack, but 10% of the wet rack should be left for the nesting shorebirds. I understand that people don't, you know, they're like, well, leave the seaweed for the birds in the wintertime. Well, the birds aren't here in the wintertime, they're here in the summertime.
Did you mean to say remove or relocate, Cabo? No removing or relocating?
Thank you, Pat. Where's my removal? No raking. Or okay. Anything else? The tree. I think they should be planting that proposed cedar tree prior to any beach nourishment. That tree should have been planted at the last. So that cedar shall be planted prior to any nourishment. Watered and maintained. Anything else that we can think of? Anything other concerns, guys?
Not for me.
Okay,
All right.
Courtney, you good?
I'm good.
Pat?
I'll make a motion to accept the order as discussed in detail.
Walsh, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the order of conditions as discussed. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, Wendy Hill and Susan Condon, 268 Surf Drive, Falmouth, Mass. And for the record, Betsy, you can clarify the quorum, but I am not voting on this. You could tell me who else is not voting on this, please.
You're muted. You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Sorry, you and Maury are not on it.
I'm not on it? Okay.
Yes, Pat, you are on it.
Oh, okay.
You are on it. Maury is not on it.
Do what mom says.
She's a good girl.
So after much discussion and clarification and angst, we got to the point where there's going to be no additional black water to the system. It is just going to be 2 additional gray water sinks that they are proposing through this amendment to tie up to the tight tank that this board has already approved. And I think that Brian had proposed some language and the staff had wanted some additional clarification. And a comment, revised staff comments.
Pat had some.
The suggestion is there may be a single connection from the raised structure to the tight tank. 1 second.
Jen, you're muted.
Guess I'm gonna sneeze.
Oh.
Maybe not. Okay. Sorry about that. Single connection from the raised structure to the tight tank. The single connection will convey all gray water from the 4 sinks at the property that That's the two additional, that includes the two additional sinks that they're proposing under this amendment, I believe. And the black water from the water toilet that will replace the incinerating toilet to the tight tank. And the staff staff recommends conditioning that there is one single toilet and that no additional black water connection should be added at any point in the future. And that should be ongoing with the deed.
Sounds good.
How does that sound, guys?
Sounds good. I'll make a motion to
Yes.
approve as discussed.
Bird second.
Jen, do you want me to add in the couple of things we talked about last time, or can we relate back to it to the last meeting?
Please, Pat.
Okay, go forward. Okay. You were just going to add the second book and page reference for the second deed.
Okay. Okay, wait. So there's a staff report.
I can send all this.
I want to add the second book and page.
Yeah.
And then on the form.
On the form, exactly. And then there is a finding, number 2, that's going to be modified. The first sentence, the full first sentence in number 2 says the property consists of a raised structure owned by applicant as tenants in common. And then the third special condition is to be amended as you've previously described. That's it.
Okay. Can you send me that language, Pat?
Yeah.
Now, there's no room to add another bedroom on here, is there? Like another room on the structure, anything? Should we add anything like that? I just want to make sure it's locked down. What was that, Jamie?
I was just going to say you covered yourself by preventing the second
toilet. Okay. Okay, good. And Pat, can you send me that language?
Sure.
Thank you. And with that, your staff is a lot more comfortable than it was when the amendment came in.
Good.
Excellent. All right, anybody have anything else? All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. Betsy.
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Mark.
Ernie, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We've issued an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, vote order of enforcement. Robert Burke, 326 Acapasket Road, East Falmouth, Mass. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was the enforcement over at Acapasket. We met multiple times with Mr. Borselli and Mr. Burke and Attorney Wall on the site. We finally got a plan that Mark and I are fairly comfortable with. We did, you know, as you heard at the last hearing, we were pretty much pushing back on them quite a bit over the expansion of that driveway. So that has been modified. There was some back and forth about the conditions for the order. Pretty straightforward. You're not going to be able to plant this time of year. It's got to be planted by the spring. Brian was helpful enough to send me a list of proposed conditions, and after reviewing them, you know, they're pretty basic conditions. The planting shall be implemented by May 15th, which we spoke about. That on or before May 25th, the owner shall submit to the Conservation Commission written confirmation that the plantings are implemented with the plan. That we have to maintain the plants through above ground irrigation. That they shall submit monitoring reports for the next 2 years. He said growing seasons 21 and 22. I'm going to add 2023. We usually like 3 years of monitoring reports. So that's the thing that obviously if there's any die off that needs to be replaced. And again, we're going to add that third year of monitoring, especially since this is a enforcement. And any violation of this order, that's fine. So I will be incorporating some Attorney Wall's suggestions because again, they're pretty basic. There is one thing though, there is a building permit in our office that it requires a sign off because of a purchase and sale. The plants are not going to be able to be put in and have any chance really of survival until May, or at least May, until the spring. So they have to be in by May 15th. Will the board be okay with the staff signing off on that building permit prior to the installation of the plants?
Do you have
Would this be recorded?
No, this is not going to be recorded, Jamie.
Do you have any leeway when you sign off on a building permit to not just check, but to approve it subject to the terms of the order and attach it?
I mean, we could. I mean, we can attach it, but the problem with this is everything's after the fact.
Right.
Building permit is after the fact. It's not like, we can go and check on the building permit. All of this work is, all of these approvals are after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
Okay.
I'm.
Well,
I mean, it's been done before. It is subject to this enforcement order.
that's what I was about to say, that even if they don't play according to the rules, they're subject to the rules as the new owner and just do another enforcement order.
Okay.
I suggest that there must be a way to communicate with Brian that the buyer, that he can acknowledge to you that the buyer is on notice of this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Then we will sign off on the building permit. I will issue this and then sign off on the building permit. So once we get this written up and issued, as soon as we issue this, then we'll sign off on the building permit.
And are you able, as I just suggested, to put a little note?
We'll put a note in the building permit application. Absolutely.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. The enforcement order is recorded?
No, Courtney.
Yeah. So we've got to have a mechanism to make sure that the subsequent owner is on the hook for it.
Under the law, they are, as the property owner, they're responsible for compliance, but it has much heavier weight if it's on record at the registry of deeds. The difficulty is it puts us in the position of having to notice them again for another enforcement order when they become the owner if they don't go according to.
It'd be nice to get a letter from them that they sign, that they acknowledge as the buyer that they're on the hook for this.
Would be nice.
Can we do that? Get an affidavit that Brian Wall would author?
I mean, I'm assuming we can put it in the enforcement order because we do know that the property is under a purchase and sale agreement. I mean, that's pretty much, that was made very clear at the hearing.
Right.
So we'll just have them, submit that from the property owner and then we'll sign the building permit.
There you go.
Put it in the findings. Okay, so they're on the hook.
Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah, we'll put it in the findings and then we'll require a letter from the potential buyer.
Okay.
Trying to say that correctly. Okay.
I like it. And Betsy, on the quorum, my notes.
Well, the problem with the quorum is I wasn't given what the quorum was for the first time. So
Okay.
I think it's Courtney, Kevin, Betsy, Jamie, Steve, Peter, and Mark. Did you all hear the first? Were all of you at the first hearing? I think you probably
There were 2 hearings.
Yeah, well, I think everybody probably was because everybody's here most of the time.
Yeah, so the only one I have that was missing was Maury at the time.
Okay, right. So Maury, and Pat's not on it because she wasn't appointed up last week.
All right, are we good?
We're good.
Anybody?
Oh, I'll make a motion to issue an enforcement order as discussed.
Bird, second.
Okay. Do a motion and a second to issue the enforcement order as discussed. So if anybody has anything else? All right, Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Mark.
Rooney, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an enforcement order. Thank you, everyone. Next up, other business discussion. Yeah, good English. Discuss definition of structure. So there's been questions about what defines a structure where it comes to redevelopment. So, Jen, do you want to start that? Or does Betsy want to start
I think
that?
this was placed on the agenda because of a question from one of the commissioners, so.
Peter's ready to present something.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. We have had some discussions for particular properties regarding structure, accessory structures, primary structures, redevelopment structures, lawfully located structure. And I think we should develop the discussion a little bit more independent of a particular property and just get a better feeling as to what all the structures are and what are the ramifications of structures and adding to structures based on the Falmouth Code. And if I can screen share a second, I can show you a couple of things.
Sure. You can try. There you go.
Okay. This is page 14 of the Falmouth Wetland Regulations. And I have highlighted the only real definition that it is incorporating structures. And it restricts the definition to lawfully located structure. And essentially, if it's legal and it's there, it's a structure. That's the most that I could figure out. And I don't want to spring it tonight with a long discussion, but I just wanted to introduce it in a couple of other pages. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, page 60. It refers to primary structure and accessory structures and some regulation fine points between the two. And finally, one more page is page 56. Redevelopment comes into the legally existing structures and also addition, rehabilitation, or replacement of accessory structures and appurtenances. So it's all wound together. And I think my understanding of how they wind together, it's a little bit shallow. And I think we should maybe have some discussion at another time that the meeting time allows it to discuss it more fully. But those are the three pages that I picked out that it's all tied together. Any comments?
So
Um,
I have a comment.
Peter, if you would stop screen sharing,
Yes,
please.
yes.
Betsy.
So I think it would be useful for maybe to start out for a small group to get together with Jen to bring some structure to this discussion.
Shaboo.
What? What?
I was just
Move on.
fun. I'm sorry.
Did you mean to say structure to this discussion? That's what we're chuckling about.
Oh, yeah.
No
Yeah,
pun
so
intended.
we all use the word structure, right? And we construct stuff. So yeah, but anyway, I think a few of us could just get together and sort of make an outline as to work through this discussion rather than just have everybody kind of throw out. I mean, people can still throw their ideas out. Anyway, I think somebody has to provide some structure for this discussion.
I think that's a good idea, but I'm not. I'm concerned locking in a definition, and this is why. There's always going to be something out there. It might not happen this year, it might not happen next year, but you know, the representatives will find a different word to use, or we will forget to add a particular type of structure in there. And I'm afraid that, you know, we could open ourselves up to more complications in our regulations that something doesn't apply because it doesn't meet our definition of structure. There has been a recent appeals case where the definition of structure, and this was the 77, I think 177 or 77 favor of the Sorokin matter, that your new associate counsel just argued from the appeals court, and there was a discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, around, you know, what is considered a structure. And I think it's our lack of definition in our regulations that actually helped us in that case. I could be wrong, Pat.
No, I think that the flexible application of what was in the regulations and the court always deferring to the commission as to their interpretation of a regulation or word. So there was deference in the commission at that, and when they originally determined that this thing on the Sorokin property was a structure, you put in your order that a building permit was required. You know, and that is not to say that building permits are always required, but it was just one additional criteria that you discussed, and the court seemed to be impressed with that. They said it wasn't unreasonable. I guess the standard when you get into an ambiguous term is the commission's interpretation reasonable? And they said in the context of how you applied it, it was reasonable.
But I mean, if the commission wants to form a little working group to discuss this issue and we can go through this, I mean, I think it's a good idea. We haven't had, done it in a while, and it's worth discussing.
But the word structure is sprinkled throughout the regulations. For instance, we talk about coastal engineering structures. So I do think it would be useful to look through the regulations. Where do we use the word structure? And can we clarify in some way? I understand your point, Jen, that you don't want to limit things, but I think I'm not going to get into what I think is a structure and what I think is not a structure right now, but I think we can clarify that. And I think it's useful. I'm glad Peter brought it up.
Oh, it'll be a useful discussion.
Courtney?
Yeah, I would support, getting a smaller group to kind of beat this around and come up with something that they could come back to the commission with. I want to reflect on this for a minute, though. I think we're going to see more of this. The more that our shore areas, coastal areas get developed, you're going to run into a lot of situations similar to the case we recently heard, where a lot was either owned by a neighbor or was split off from a larger estate. And before that happened, it was maintained. Things like seawalls or things of that nature were put on the lot and were maintained perfectly legal because they came in existence before 1978 or 9 or whenever that time was. And then the question becomes, okay, now does that mean that since this thing was maintained, since there was a seawall on there, does that mean that the redevelopment rules allow, and so that people can build a house where none existed before? And that's an interesting question. And I think we need to come up with some clarity on that. And I think that's an area that we should look at, because we're going to see more of this now. You're going to see estates getting broken up. And, prior to that, they mowed the lawn right down to the edge of the seawall, which they built. And they had walls, and they had swimming pools, or they had fountains or some other features on there. Well, does that mean, but no house? But does that mean now, because there were these things in existence, that therefore it's redevelopment, they can build a house, whereas otherwise they wouldn't be allowed to? So this is, I think these are the things we need to get some clarity on.
And it's tricky because, this commission has seen the manipulation and the interpretation of different set of regulations, at least over the last 15 years that I've been working with you. We've run into this multiple times. So it's worth discussing and exploring. But let's be cautious as well.
We can only have 3 people in the working group, right?
There's 3 of you and me, so that makes 4 people.
Well, I'm talking about
Commissioners, correct. You cannot have a quorum. Who wants to volunteer?
I volunteer.
I will.
All right, we have 3 right there.
Steve, Mark, Peter, Courtney. How about I throw names in a hat and pick them?
Just by the way, subcommittees are subject to the open meeting law, so it needs to be posted whenever you get together. Keep minutes, all that, yes.
Oh, well, then I'm in, you guys. If we have to post it anyway.
You don't have to worry about
other than that.
It can be a quorum.
Yeah.
You can have a quorum.
And definitely Peter should be on it, because he's the one who brought
I know, Peter, Mark, Courtney, and Steve.
Well, I'll throw my name in there too, if we're gonna have
Betsy.
We should throw Pat's name in, because
Hey, don't volunteer other people.
That's the legal mind.
he's the legal mind.
We need the legal point of it.
When you look up structures in conservation on the internet, you get what Betsy was talking about. You get groins and you get other, but you rarely find the definition as Peter was pointing out in his presentation.
Yeah.
Very interesting to do the lookup.
Pat, let me ask you a question if you don't mind. If we had 3 working groups of 3 commissioners each, just so that everybody got their opinion out there, is that circumventing the public meeting?
All subcommittees, regardless of number of participants, are subject to the open meeting law.
No, what I'm asking is that if we have a working group of just 3 commissioners, then it wouldn't be a quorum, it wouldn't be an open meeting.
No, it is. It is. That's what I'm trying to say. The open meeting law says that if a commission creates a subcommittee, that subcommittee is subject.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay for, 1 or 2 people to meet with your administrator for, an administrative matter, but subcommittees are specifically called out as being subject to the open meeting law.
Okay.
Yeah, and particularly where we're discussing potential changes in the regulations and matters of policy, it absolutely should be an open meeting.
You do realize your meetings are going to be on Zoom, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me check with the IT department because that means I need somehow to have another license, but I'm sure I could probably just use mine. So let me check with the IT department because I know they have rotating licenses for the committees. So Thomas, expect a call from me tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Oh, I didn't think we'd hear. I thought he was buried in his novel.
Nope. Okay. So this will be good. This will be a good exercise for us. Joy.
I don't think Peter is eager to jump into this next week. Are you, Peter? This is something we might be able to put off to 2021.
I think that makes sense with the holidays.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and also it would help all of us to review the pages that Peter pointed out, and then maybe do a little bit of research on our own as far as what other towns call structures and so forth.
Right.
So.
No, absolutely. Jen has all the other towns, not all the other towns, but a bunch of town regulations, which when we did change regulations, how long ago was that, Jen? 12 years
a while ago?
Yeah.
Kevin and I and Alyssa, when she's available, also attend a meeting of all of the Cape Cod agents. We actually have one tomorrow. So Kevin, if I'm not allowed to make that, are you making that one tomorrow? Do you know, Kevin, off the top of your head?
I should be able to.
Yeah. You're coming down here though in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Right for you. I think it's at 2:00. We can toss it out to the other towns and see how and if they define structure. I think that's a good place to start as well. Let's not recreate the wheel. See what the towns do.
So you're talking about doing a Zoom meeting that would be independent, correct?
Correct.
Well, and that would be good because then it would just be focused on that.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
that's good.
I did what Steve did. When Peter and I first talked about it, I pulled out the dictionary, which I think is also useful for everybody to do.
What? The dictionary? Oh,
all right. Anybody have anything else you want to add into that? All right. Then we'll wait till after Jen's discussion with Thomas for a meeting for some time, maybe in January. And in the meantime, if anybody has anything, maybe shoot it to Jen, and then we can all be prepared and ready.
May I make a motion
Yep,
to adjourn?
sure.
I make a motion to adjourn. Gladfelder.
Bird, second.
All right, just to be clear, Peter, that's a good start for what we're looking for.
Yes, I'm not necessarily after changing the regulations, but after a better understanding and consensus of the group.
Okay.
Excellent. All right, so that's going to be our goal. All right, so we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
That was it, folks. We're adjourned.